So I wanted to share a little bit about how I made this desk. Just do a quick kind of voiceover and walk through some of the steps. It started pretty routine, just taking some lumber, using the track saw there at the beginning to clean up the edges like a jointer, since I don't have one, and create a desktop, glue it together with biscuit joints, which are really just to help align the boards. They don't add a ton of strength, but it saves you a lot of time later when you're sanding and getting everything level. Once I have the top clamped up and drying, I just took my plans and laid out the legs on a couple larger, thicker pieces of lumber. You want to make sure you pick some good spots where the grain can wrap around the top of the front of the leg, because that's really the coolest part of the leg. So I didn't get the footage of me cutting them out, but basically you can see here I'm just copying my plans, making sure I can get two legs out of one piece, not waste any material. And so this is after they're cut out. So I'm using a hand plane just to get them close, not perfect. The only part that really needs to be perfect are the front and the back of where the miter meets. The rest of it you can clean up after they're assembled. Just doing some little bit of chisel work and sanding to get them probably to like 90%, but it's good to leave them a little fat and a little long this early, so because it's always easier to take some off later. And I use a miter stitch set to put these kind of compound angles together, or anything that's not a face to a face. It's at a 45. They work pretty good for anything from 30 to 60 degrees. Get good pressure. And you clamping one piece down to the work surface always helps, because then you only have one moving piece. Since the joints are going to support a lot of weight, I added some hidden dowels, making sure you don't drill all the way through and ruin the face. You can do this before the glue up and try to line up dowels, but if it's something like this where your top of this leg is always going to be connected to the desktop and you'll never be able to see this, you can save yourself a lot of time and hassle trying to get two holes perfectly lined up, and just do it after the first glue up to strengthen your miter joint. And with glue, M equals more. And then, like I said before, if you leave them a little long, like right here, the top one's actually a little fatter than the bottom one, you don't have to worry about having a flawless joint. It's actually easier to clean the joint up after it's glued together. And just trimming off the dowels, getting them cleaned up so I can attach the rear legs, because the leg assembly on this is basically two independent front and back legs. And I trim the top with a protractor to get the right angle, and then I just line it up with the front leg's top. And I used a couple brads to hold it in place and glue, and once the glue was set pretty well that I didn't think I would move it, I did the same trick with some more hidden dowels to reinforce it. These legs are pretty minimal, and they're both splayed out at decent angles, so reinforcing them is a must, otherwise you definitely break one. And then you just get to spend an hour cleaning up the top. And like everything else, I left it pretty long so I could trim it down later. and get it perfect. And I like to leave these live edges and little imperfections on a lot of my stuff, since it's all very kind of modern and geometric and lots of sharp angles. If you let the natural part of the wood kind of interrupt it, I think it makes a more interesting piece. So you can see there, like the back leg on that one had a lot of kind of like almost a live edge and a lot of imperfections in the wood. Now what I'm doing here is just trimming them down to length. I'm kind of marking a simulated ground on the top there on the workstation, and then transferring the marks over to the legs and just kind of cutting them by hand and then cleaning up the edges. You could do this later with a top attached and a scribe, but as long as you take your time laying out the legs, you should be able to get it fine doing it this way. I always find it's good to sand kind of after each step. It saves you from having to do too much at the end, which gets repetitive and boring. So if you just kind of pick away at it each time you make new parts together or cut something out, it seems to make it go faster, even though the total time is probably the same. And then I just use a track saw to trim this down to its final width so I can lay out the legs and get ready to attach them. And I just used my straight edge to kind of line them up, and the drywall square there to make sure the back of the leg is lined up perfectly with the back of the desk. I put in some threaded inserts so that I can bolt the legs to the desktop, and this way they're removable. Since it's kind of an ungainly thing to move, it's good to make things like come apart. And I just used all thread, so that way I didn't have to get the dimension perfectly when I countersink them. It just has to be relatively close. And for finish, I did 3 or 4 coats of teak oil, just kind of buff it in, let it dry for overnight, and then put a couple more on. Just keep doing it till you like it. I like it because it dries with a really natural look. It's not too glossy. It soaks in. And you can see in the bottom of the leg there, the little countersinks for where the bolts are going to go. So you can't see them once it's attached. And had it all looking nice, ready to take some photos, but had a little accident moving it, and I put all the weight laterally on these legs and got to tear out the threads from the desk. So I get to redo it, which is fun. All I did is just clean out all the busted wood and chips from the threads and from the desktop. And then I took a really thin drill bit and bored some holes kind of in the sides of where the threads were. And basically those holes are going to become like finger holds for this epoxy. So it'll fill up all those voids and hopefully give it a really strong hold on the desktop and be at least as strong as it was before. Luckily, this desk is just for me, so I'm not giving it to anyone or selling it to anyone, so I don't have to worry about this little mess up in the bottom here. No one will ever know but me and you. And then I just reattach it. You can see there, that's how we attach it. Just screwed some nuts and washers into those countersinks. And here's a little video of the finished product. Didn't get the lighting quite right, sorry, but there's a few photos too. Hope you learned something, liked it, and check out some of our other work. Thanks for watching.